Good evening, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the south. Bird flu outbreak, warnings after 9 swans test positive at a popular tourist attraction in Dorset. So what precautions must now be in place?
An appeal to GPs in Brighton stop prescribing over-the-counter painkillers to save £500,000 and find out what the money could buy instead.
Happy birthday Crawley, 70 years as a new town and opened by a then young Princess Elizabeth.
And Arctic blast, are we about to see snow and more of this by the end of the week? Good evening to you. Bird flu has returned to the historic Abbotsbury Swanery in Dorset tonight. The outbreak has been detected in 9 mute swans and it's feared many more could now be at risk.
The popular tourist attraction near Weymouth is currently closed to the public for the winter season. But bosses say every precaution is being taken to protect staff and prevent further spread.
Well, the current strain of avian flu is a low risk to public health, but a wider outbreak could be catastrophic for poultry farmers across the south, as Rachel Hepworth now reports.
Abbotsbury's world-famous mute swans were being kept at a distance today, entry restricted to essential staff only, after an outbreak of the avian flu which has been sweeping through Europe.
It's very distressing for the swanery staff, although we expect to have losses through the winter because of various ailments and old age. We would expect normally 30 to 40 losses, but we've had 80 so far up to today.
Of those, just 9 have tested positive for the H5N8 strain of the disease, different to that which affected the colony back in 2008, prompting strict biocontrols at nearby farms. Though considered low risk to humans, the disease is contagious and potentially catastrophic to poultry. In previous outbreaks, thousands of birds had to be culled to prevent further infection.
Yeah, there should be birds in every single pen. They're all inside, not very happy.
There's no roaming free at Hare Farm in Hampshire at the moment. Ruth Wyatt and her husband ploughed all their money into the small holding 4 years ago and welcomed the controls.
Come on, girls, come on.
So strict is the prevention zone that we couldn't film the 800 poultry being kept inside. Those outside are kept in a controlled pen.
Oh, there's always going to be avian flu around, no matter what we do. But at the moment, it's literally just spreading worse, and it's worse than I've ever known it spread. You know, we'll do everything we can to protect our birds, and it'd be nice to think everybody would.
Those measures ordered by DEFRA include disinfectant, netting and controlling the movement of birds. The prevention zone has been in place since the start of December, requiring poultry and bird owners to keep them effectively segregated against wild birds. Those measures are now going to be ex-February to prevent the risk of further outbreaks.
I hope awareness is now getting very strong. Most people do want to protect their birds, or quite often their family pets. They want to do their best for them. Abbotsbury is the latest finding of this disease. Not a surprise, but it's very distressing that it's turned up in another place in such wonderful birds as swans.
At Abbotsbury, they're hoping the worst of the outbreak is over, but they, like all bird owners, will be monitoring the situation closely. Rachel Hepworth, ITV News at Abbotsbury.
Thousands of rail commuters have been told not to travel at all this week, with a 3-day walkout by Southern train drivers from tomorrow.
It is likely to be one of the most disruptive rail strikes in decades. No Southern trains will run across the network from Southampton and Portsmouth in the west to Seaford and Lewes in the east. There are no Gatwick Express services south of Gatwick Airport.
And only Thameslink trains will go from Brighton to London. Southern are laying on 200 buses so passengers can get on to other train networks. They will go from Chichester to Havant, Seaford to Lewes and East Grinstead to Gatwick.
Well, our transport correspondent Mike Pearce is outside Brighton station now. Mike, it's complicated. Is everyone prepared for it?
Yes, indeed. They've been giving out leaflets at all the stations today with all the details, and there are posters, and of course there's been massive amounts of publicity. What are people going to do? Well, I think some people will be staying up in London, hotels, on friends' couches. Other people will be working from home or crowding onto those buses that you were just talking about there. Well, earlier today we caught up with commuters to find out how they'll get to work tomorrow or if they'll stay at home.
I'll be probably working at home on the strike days. Luckily I've got the flexibility to do that.
I've missed countless exams at college, having to get grandparents and relatives to go in late to work to take me in.
National Express have offered to take everyone to work via buses, which is a 6-hour round trip, which isn't ideal.
People are losing their jobs and everything over this. You know, how much longer can people put up with this?
I feel furious about it and powerless, frustrated.
So, Mike, what is the advice for those long-suffering commuters?
I think the best advice is really to stay at home if you can. Don't attempt to travel. There will be 200 buses, as we heard, but they're going to be extremely busy, as I say. And I think, you know, the trains that are running, there will be some services on Thameslink from Brighton here to London, and there will be some Gatwick Express, half the normal service, but those services will be extremely busy. Apart from that, don't expect any Southern services at all. This was the advice from Southern earlier today.
Our advice to passengers tomorrow is not to travel unless absolutely essential, as we're not operating any services on Southern tomorrow. We apologise to our passengers who are once again being caught up in the misery of this dispute, and the ones that are most affected by this dispute. Our door is open to the union at any time for them to come and talk to us and call off this industrial action, which is so unnecessary and so unreasonable, and I ask them to do that.
Well, that's what Southern are asking. I can tell you, as things stand tonight, both ASLEF and the RMT, both involved in this, say there are no more concrete talks planned that will call off this action in time for tomorrow, Wednesday and Friday. So as things stand tonight, the strike is definitely on. Misery for hundreds of thousands of people from midnight.
Mike Pearce at Brighton Station for now. Thank you.
A 17-year-old boy has appeared before magistrates in Bournemouth charged with attempted murder. Police were called to the junction of Ashley Road and South Road in Boscombe on Saturday evening, where a man in his 50s was found with serious injuries. The teenager has also been charged with possessing a blade in public. He appeared before Bournemouth Magistrates Court.
A couple have been taken to hospital with burns after a fire broke out at their bungalow in Greatley near Andover. Crews were called to Monkston Road in the early hours of this morning. The blaze damaged the kitchen and the roof of the property, and investigations underway into the cause.
Hampshire already has the highest number of compensation claims in the country, but there's a warning tonight that the problem of potholes could reach a tipping point this year.
Yes, the local government association says the road repair bill is likely to soar to £14 billion in the next 2 years. Well, now teams of volunteers are joining the pothole fight, as Mary Stanley reports.
Tackling potholes in her private road in the New Forest is an uphill battle for Sue Middleton. So she has every sympathy for local councils who have thousands of miles of road to repair. And she's encouraging others to join her pothole campaign.
You must get a bit fed up with them. Yes, very fed up. And I do moan a lot about them to my husband, but then I think I better do something about it. So I go out and fill them up.
You'd encourage other people to do their bit as well?
Yes, I would. Yes, it's being good neighbourly and something for the community. I wouldn't do it on a main road, of course.
And Sue's not alone in her mission. In an AA survey, 21% of men and 16% of women said they'd be prepared to pick up their shovels and join the road gang. But of those questioned, 50% said any volunteers should get a council tax rebate.
Filling them is a skill, and if you get it wrong, then you'll have to go out and fill it again, and that incurs an additional cost. So what we want to see is local authorities get the funding from central government to start with. Whilst we appreciate that community spirit is alive and well, and that's great to see, we want local authorities to actually be in a position where they can tackle the plight of potholes themselves.
But there's a warning 2017 could see the problem reach crisis point, with the local government association claiming it could cost £14 billion to bring our roads up to scratch. Last year, more than £1 million was paid in compensation for damage to cars. Hampshire had the highest number of claims, totalling £103,000.
What the local government association is saying, motorists are already hard-pressed, paying some of the highest taxes in the world. What we're saying is 2 pence out of what they already pay in fuel duty could be put into improving the local road network.
The government says it's allocated £50 million a year to tackle potholes, but campaigners warn it's not enough. And cash-strapped councils will only be able to patch up our roads or rely on the help of volunteers. Mary Stanley, ITV News.
Indeed, you are watching ITV News Meridian. Thank you very much as always for choosing us. Coming up, Simon with the weather and news of a possible Arctic blast. We'll find out. Plus,
Crawley at 70. Platinum celebrations for the town that hasn't stopped growing.
no, it certainly hasn't. And for more on all of our stories, do head to itv.com/Meridian. Why not give us a call? 0808 1010 095 is the number to ring. And we always love to hear from you, or get in touch via Facebook, where there's views on our pothole story, or send us a tweet at ITV Meridian.
Common painkillers will no longer be given free to some patients in Sussex. The local NHS in Brighton and Hove say it's vastly more expensive to prescribe paracetamol and ibuprofen than it is to buy them over the counter.
Well, a prescription from a GP costs the NHS £45. That includes consultation time, of course, but paracetamol or ibuprofen can be bought for as little as 19p from some supermarkets.
Well, health chiefs want to save £500,000 a year to spend on other services. Patients may soon have to pay for other medications too. Here's Malcolm Shaw.
Monday morning, and there's a waiting room full of patients to see the doctors at this surgery in Brighton. Every year in the city, 100,000 consultations result in prescriptions for the painkillers, paracetamol or ibuprofen. But now, to cut costs, GPs will stop doing that routinely, leaving many patients to buy the medications themselves.
It's part of having discussions with patients and informing patients and health professionals that there are other ways of helping them get through short-lived illnesses, strains, aches and pains. And the other options are likely to be a benefit in terms of saving the NHS money, but also quicker options for them, pharmacies.
The NHS says it costs more than £45 to prescribe paracetamol and ibuprofen when you factor in a consultation with a doctor, but the drugs can be bought for a fraction of that across the counter in chemists and supermarkets.
We're not saying to people who've got long-term conditions or people who've got low income that they won't be able to get their medication. We're trying to target probably the 80% of the population that when they've got a minor ailment that they manage it themselves.
Health chiefs say the move would save £500,000 a year, which could pay for over 100 hip replacements, 26 courses of drugs for breast cancer, or more than 400 cataract operations. Some fear paying for painkillers erodes the principle of a free NHS, but patients we spoke to seemed happy.
I can see it's a good way of saving money, and I can see, it seems ridiculous to have to pay 4 times as much for a prescription if someone can just go and buy it for a few pence.
Brighton and Hove is the first place in the county to introduce this measure, and it's due to be extended to other common medications later this year. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Brighton.
Later tonight here on ITV, it's the Martin Lewis Money Show. This week, the money-saving expert focusing on mortgages and energy prices, and he's lots of top tips to tell you about. Ahead of the show, we can speak to him. Martin, thanks for joining us. It's January. Lots of people have overspent on Christmas. Money can be tight. So how can you help them save pennies in 2017?
Well, do you know, I had a really big think about what the topic of tonight's show should be, because we do road shows and people ask a whole variety of questions. And I think my biggest warning for everybody out there in 2017 is that this could be the year that we see the end of cheap mortgage deals. They've already come off the boil from the historic lows. They're up fractions of a percent on what they were a couple of months ago. Much of this is about the Trump victory in the States, which has boosted the prediction for long-term interest rates, and we're seeing those rise quite rapidly. And it would not surprise me if we look back in 18 months to 2 years' time at exactly right now and said, that was it. That was the moment. I wish I'd remortgaged. I wish I'd got a cheaper deal. And my big message right now is I know there are many people who aren't sleeping because of their debts, because they're in debt crisis, because they can't afford to pay them back, they can't afford to make the minimum repayments. And money and mental health is a big passion of mine. I've got set up a policy institute, a charity, to deal with that. But my big message to you, if you're not sleeping right now because of your debts, go and see one of the non-profit debt counselling agencies, National Debt Line, Citizens Advice Bureau, Step Change, Christians Against Poverty.
The lucky ones, of course, already booking holidays. Do you cover how to get the best deals in the series?
We will do, certainly. We'll go through exactly how to get the best deals on holidays. I always like to do that. And it's a question of whether you want to go DIY, which works well if you're going to city breaks or you're not going away for 7, 10 or 14 days. If you are going away for 7, 10 or 14 days to a traditional holiday destination, travel agents can still be winners out there. But there's lots of tricks and tips when it comes to booking holidays. Of course, the big problem people have got this year is the pound's weakness, especially in Europe and the United States. It's going to make things more expensive. It's worth considering whether you want to stay in Britain. If you are going to be going abroad, you have to start to be clever and think about, you know, all-inclusives that were booked earlier tend to be better because they haven't factored in the rise of the pound that's going on in there. But there are loads of different tricks. We will be doing those too. Probably not enough time in this interview to go through them all, though.
The show's on tonight at 8 o'clock. Always good value for money. Martin Lewis, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Network Rail has been fined £800,000 after a track worker suffered life-changing injuries when he was hit by an 80-mile-per-hour Brighton to London train. Network Rail pleaded guilty to 2 health and safety charges at Guildford Crown Court. The man was struck on his shoulder and thrown down an embankment 3 years ago.
Nuclear workers at sites in Oxfordshire and Dorset are to be balloted for strike action. 16,000 members of trade unions across the country will vote whether to walk out in a row over pensions. The Nuclear Decommissioning Authority wants to save £660 million.
Police have released these CCTV images of the moment a car was stolen at a petrol station in Hampshire. The victim left his engine running whilst he went inside the Esso petrol station at Parkgate. It happened last Wednesday evening.
£4 million will be spent restoring Stanmer Park in Sussex. The money from the Heritage Lottery Fund will go towards reshaping 20 hectares of the park near Brighton over the next 10 years.
Rolls-Royce, owned by German company BMW based in West Sussex, has announced its second highest sales record in 100 years. The firm had previously said leaving the European Union would drive up costs and affect workers, but today bosses confirmed their commitment to Britain with plans to keep factories in the UK. That's because of a 6% increase in sales on the previous year.
OK, time now for the sport with Chris Moore. Chris, a weekend of drama in the FA Cup.
It certainly was, Fred. Yes, we're reflecting on FA Cup weekend. It produced an array of heroes, villains, high spots and howlers. Followers of Oxford, Brighton and even Southampton will be anticipating this evening's 4th round draw, while for Bournemouth, Reading and Eastleigh, their FA Cup interest is over for another season. Let's start with a couple of winners.
Selco Builders Warehouse, proud sponsors of ITV Meridian Sports Report.
While Chris Maguire's failure from 12 yards didn't help League One Oxford, it would still prove a fruitful trip to Rotherham. Ryan Taylor, who began his career with the South Yorkshire club, put Oxford in front just before half-time. Although the Championship's bottom club levelled things up through Darren Ward, Oxford went through courtesy of goals from Phil Edwards and Kane Hemmings. Premier League Swansea were knocked out of the Cup at the Kassam last season. The U's would love a top club at home in round 4. Brighton aren't fazed by the prospect of a cup run. Manager Chris Hughton said he'd love another home draw after his side dispatched the MK Dons at the Amex. Beram Kayal marked his return after recovering from ankle surgery with the opening goal. A special moment after missing more than 3 months. And Kayal then turned provider, setting up his compatriot Tomer Hemid with the second. Hughton was one manager who didn't regret making 11 changes to his team. Southampton are in this evening's 4th round draw, but they've added another fixture to their congested season. Virgil van Dijk put them in front at Norwich. Claude Puel gave a debut to 19-year-old keeper Harry Lewis, but after miscontrolling he brought down Cameron Jerome and Stephen Whittaker punished him from the spot. It looked as though Maya Yoshida's header would take Saints through, but another header from Stephen Naismith
earned the Canaries a replay at St Mary's. And the fixtures just keep on coming for Saints. On Wednesday, they're at home to Liverpool in the first leg of their League Cup semi-final. Manager Claude Puel says defender Jose Font, who was left out on Saturday after asking for a transfer, won't feature against Liverpool.
He doesn't participate with this game. We will see for the next game, but I think for the moment and for the situation of Jose, it's important to keep stability on the defense with players. We don't know the next future for Jose.
Saints Liverpool on Wednesday. Well, Bournemouth were among 3 Premier League clubs knocked out by lower league opposition. Reading and Eastleigh also bade farewell to the cup. National League Eastleigh certainly had their moments in this season's FA Cup, notably beating Swindon, but they went out at Brentford. Keeper Graham Stack conceded a penalty and Johan Barbe put the Championship club on their way. And this second from Tom Field soon became 3. Martin Allen's side, who are back in league action at home to Forest Green Rovers tomorrow evening, did register 1 goal. Ayo Obilai with the finish, but in the end the Spitfires went down 5-1. Bournemouth manager Eddie Howe was left to reflect on his selection after his squad players were taken apart by Millwall. Steve Morrison put the Lions in front and the Cherries were picked off 3-0. Expect the first choice players to return for Saturday's Premier League game at Hull. Jaap Stam was back at Old Trafford with Reading, but Wayne Rooney grabbed the headlines. His lead goal was his 249th for United, equalling Sir Bobby Charlton's scoring record. Reading were well beaten 4-0 in the end, and keeper Ali Al-Habsi had a nightmare moment as United marched on. We'll forgive Al-Habsi, he's won enough games for Reading this season. Now in ice hockey, the Basingstoke Bison stay 4th in the EL. Declan Balmer hit the target with the 6-1 victory over the Peterborough Fan. Slovakian Rene Jaralan was the main man, scoring 4 and assisting with the other 2. The Bison also beat the Bracknell Bees 5-2 on Sunday. Another South African cricketer is heading to the South Coast. All-rounder David Wiese will join Sussex in June. He's agreed a 3-year contract, joining compatriot Stean van Zyl, whose signing was announced before Christmas. And of course that follows Hampshire signing 2 South African players last week. That's our sports news this evening.
Bring back cricket, bring back the summer.
Bring it back.
Be good, won't it?
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Now, on this day, in 1947, 70 years ago, Crawley was chosen as one of 8 new towns to be built outside of London. 3 years later, the then Princess Elizabeth received a warm welcome on her first visit to the town.
For many, Crawley was to be an escape from the heavily bombed and overcrowded capital city. But as Abigail Bracken reports for Crawley, that was just the beginning. Her report does contain flashing images.
On the same day, nearby Crawley, both the new town and the old, is honoured by a royal visit. Crawley New Town is not merely close to Gatwick geographically, it is close to it in spirit too. For both were built to relieve overcrowding in one form or another, and both are proud of being the most modern of their kind.
The Queen visiting Crawley in 1958 on the day she opened Gatwick, an airport that has driven the growth of Crawley ever since. It was 70 years ago to this day, in 1947, when Crawley was first announced as a new town, which is why they've been celebrating at the town hall. Along with the son of Anthony Minocchio, the architect who was asked to draw up plans for 9 new neighbourhoods between the villages of Three Bridges, Ifield and what was then the small market town of Crawley.
His vision for Crawley and all his new towns was to make it a thoroughly sort of user-friendly place. Wide open spaces, lots of trees, nice houses, nice buildings, every conceivable detail he went into. And what is marvellous for me, actually, is to hear that it's actually worked. And it would have been even better for him, obviously.
So green spaces and trees were an essential part of the original plans for Crawley 70 years ago. but Crawley has grown massively since that time. From the original plans for just 50,000 people, it now has a population of over 100,000.
Crawley, which has grown and which has rejoiced, the multi-ethnic community, and everybody has come in there and just enriched the community to a level where it is very difficult to say that it has stopped. It has never stopped. It is still growing and we're still rejoicing with it.
And the building never stops either.
It's got all the shops you need, really. It's better than East Grinstead did, let's put it that way.
Just like Croydon, it's just massive buildings, and all the little family shops have all gone as well, which don't help.
There's a lot of people come in here and do their shopping and everything. I think it is quite good, really. Yes, Crawley's coming on. It is coming on better.
And although we don't know whether it'll be better in another 70 years from now, it will almost certainly be bigger. Abigail Bracken, ITV News, Crawley.
Happy birthday, Crawley, and welcome back, Simon. Simon, stop reading the paper. It's time to talk to us now.
Well, no, it's important stuff going on,
Sangus,
here.
So come on, tell us, is it going to snow?
Well, would you like 10 inches? Could you go with that?
Not
Could
10,
you?
thank you.
Okay, 4 inches, 10 centimetres of snow. Well, the Daily Express have kind of almost sort of got it right, but not exactly. Have a look at this first. This is the map of Europe, where you can see massively cold in Eastern Europe. 10 in some places, whereas we've been plus 10, but have a look at this and you can see that on Wednesday we're going to have this weather front here drifting eastwards, and behind it, that's what allows the rush of cold air to come down from the frozen north. Now with that cold air we're also going to see some flecks of white here and there, and that means there is a risk of some snow showers, mainly affecting other parts of the country. So your weather warnings look like this. First and foremost, you've got Scotland, as you would expect, being the place where we're going to see the heaviest of the snow. And then it's later on in the week that we'll see the weather warnings just sort of skirting around the edge of the country. So our bit unaffected at this point, but a lot can change. Keep an eye on the forecast.
Let's hope a lot doesn't change in the next couple of days.
We don't like it, we don't want it.
Let's get the immediate forecast now from Simon Parkin.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Well, what a difference a day makes. This was the slightly gloomy start in Bewley yesterday, although I must confess a bit of early mist and murk does have a pretty charm to it. Meanwhile, this morning, a gorgeous start. This was Fisherman's Bank in Dorset, where Steve Hogan was out with his camera at around 8 o'clock. Sadly, the day didn't go quite this well. The cloud quickly thickened up, and then we saw some rain arrive, courtesy of a weather front that's now sitting out towards the east. Behind, we've got some clear skies to look forward to, but further weather fronts coming in, although mainly bringing just a bit of extra cloud until that one passes through on Wednesday, and that's the one that lets all of that cold air in for the end of the week. So for tonight, it will be a little bit nippy, a lot of clear skies. Temperatures will down to around 3-4 degrees, but you probably noticed it was quite windy today. That wind's going to stay with us overnight tonight too, so that should stop mist and frost from becoming too much of a problem, but it will still be a little bit cool first thing tomorrow. There'll be some brightness around first thing, but again we're going to see that cloud start to thicken up, largely dry through the day, but you might just find odd spots of drizzly rain as the day goes on, and already feeling that bit cooler. Temperatures down around 2-3 degrees on today's values, peaking tomorrow at around 7 or 8 degrees. As for your high tide times, well, you can see Poole Harbour around 7:30 in the morning, then around 10 to 8 tomorrow evening, and then a mild but cloudy and damp start to Wednesday. Once that's out of the way, things will turn colder as the day goes on, and then we're into the frozen end of the week, and that's when we could see those wintry showers cropping up.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
In just a moment, we've got the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Sangeeta's got our late news this evening, so do join her if you can. But for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thank you, as always, very much indeed for watching. See you a little bit later. From all of us, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.